Hello, gentlemen. How are we doing today? We are going to be talking about the importance of sleep and essentially why it is so damn important for us to focus on, and it can be the real catalyst behind any results that you get. Whether you're on a fat loss journey, whether you're on a weight gain journey and trying to gain muscle, sleep is the time to rest, recover, and recuperate, and that's where most of the growth in your muscles happen. Okay, so it can also directly impact the following day. If you have a bad night's sleep and you're super tired, your decision making is down the drain, your energy is out, your focus is out. But we're gonna get into that because sleep definitely falls into the category of as much importance as diet, as training, and any other things that you might consider to be super important when it comes to your health and fitness. I've got some notes here just to make sure I touch on all the topics. But just so you know, we are going to be talking today about why sleep matters. So just touch on some elements there. Poor sleep equals poor fitness. So the relationship between poor sleep and your poor performance. How to improve and maximize sleep. So this is where you're going to get some real tips, some tactics, some strategies to enhance your sleep and get the most out of it. And then how to spot that you're getting poor quality sleep, because it's not always necessarily a case of not getting enough. There's signs and symptoms that's a tongue twister, but to suggest that you are not sleeping, you're not getting enough quality sleep to be optimal. Okay, so why sleep matters. All right, so essentially, sleep is super important for muscular recovery. The growth hormone peaks during sleep, and this is literally your time. Imagine, you're a caterpillar in a cocoon. That is when you are regenerating, restoring. Okay, you're not going to come out and look like a beautiful butterfly in one night, but equate all that sleep together, and over a few years you go back into your cocoon and you're slowly becoming that beautiful butterfly, or in our case, that absolute jacked motherfucker with muscles bulging. That's what we're trying to get to. Lean, shredded, athletic, boom. Metabolic regulation. So what does this mean? These are relating to your hunger hormones, okay? And they're basically regulated whilst you're asleep. If your sleep is scattered, if it's not very good quality, if it's essentially messed up, then the hormone production of these hormones is also messed up. It's also out of sync. So that can cause you to be, hungry at different times. It can cause your cravings to increase. And more often than not, it's cravings for sugary, processed, easy, convenient foods, the foods that we love but the foods that we shouldn't really love. Brain function, of course, we all wake up tired, we feel like a zombie, we feel like we have lost 50 points on the IQ scale, let alone just a few. But yeah, it basically affects your memory consolidation. So if you're trying to learn something the following day, especially if you are maybe new to fitness and trying to execute new movements in the gym, it can be so much more difficult when you're tired, and that then relates to motor learning. So this is actually building the motor pathways within the CNS, which is the central nervous system, and across the body to create those movement patterns, so you're able to perform the movements, especially when you're looking at more difficult compound movements like a deadlift, like a barbell squat. There's a lot to think about and a lot to program in there. And focus, of course, we've all been there. We're super tired, either after a long day of work or when we do wake up in the morning after a bad night's sleep, and we just can't focus on anything. It seems like you've got the attention span of a goldfish. Nothing's going in. Driving is an absolute nightmare because you're the unsafest person on the road, or is that just me when I'm tired? But no, all jokes aside, the focus is really affected by your lack of sleep as well. So poor sleep equals poor fitness. So, essentially what happens to your performance when your sleep's not up to scratch? A lot, actually. Firstly, you're going to notice straight away reduced strength and endurance. You're going to have less power. You're going to have less, should we say, persistence, less pain tolerance to push that little bit further, and, less reaction time in the sense that, when it's time to push, when it's time to program, when it's time to send those nerves through the nervous system to the working muscles, they don't react as fast. So essentially, you are not going to be able to generate as much power. At the same time, if you've got poor sleep, you're not going to have as much energy. So that endurance is going to dwindle much quicker than usual. Delayed recovery. So again, going back to what sleep is important for in terms of muscle regeneration and rejuvenation and recovery, if you're not getting that, it's only going to affect your recovery in the long term, which then leads to an increase of risk in injury. Have you ever felt tight or sore when you wake up in the morning, or your back's quite stiff? If you were then to go and work out, your chances of injuring yourself are going to be higher than as if you were to get a good night's sleep. Fat gain and muscle loss. Now, this has got some, shall we say, debate around it, but there's studies to show this is 100% true. When it comes to your sleep being messed up, it messes with the insulin and testosterone in terms of the hormones within the body. So essentially, from a physiological point of view and science-based view, that you're going to be more disposed then to losing muscle and gaining fat because you're tired, because you're not getting enough sleep, because your hormones aren't being regulated properly. Now, this more so leads into the next point for me is where, well, the muscle loss can also be contributed to the fact that, you're not going to go to that session with the same intensity, the same purpose, the same effort, or you might not even go to the session and train at all because you're so tired. And if you rack up consistency in bad sleep, then your consistency in the gym is only going to fall, which will lead to muscle loss. On top of that, cravings and poor diet choices are very common after a bad night's sleep. They make your decision-making processes much more difficult, and your decision-making much less within your control. You're more easy or more susceptible to giving into these cravings and poor food choices because you just don't really know or can't really program or can't really think about the things that you should be doing. At the same time, when you're tired, you've got less effort to make and prepare a healthy meal. You might opt for something super convenient like a pot noodle, a packet of crisps, and a Mars bar, and then you're happy. But your body's not happy at that point, and that can then lead to more fat gain because you're making more bad diet choices. And of course, mental fog and burnout. You just don't operate to your optimum when you've had poor sleep. You just can't think as sharply. Have you ever had to try and hold a conversation, especially if you're in work with a superior and you're tired? It's so goddamn difficult because you just don't have all those systems within the brain, within the body firing as they would usually. So, of course, mental fog and burnout is going to be a case. So, in relation to fitness, like me in CrossFit, if I've got to count a number of rounds, a number of reps, this is the hardest thing when you're tired. Like, of course, the physical side of things is definitely impacted, but trying to count is so difficult, man. So difficult. So how to improve and maximize your sleep. Now, I would say first and foremost, this should be considered as important as your training routine, as your diet, as your sort of your NEAT activity and movement throughout the day. This has the same, if not even more impact than those three. You could do all those three absolutely perfectly, but if your sleep isn't isn't of quality, you're leaving a lot on the table. In fact, you might even be able to do nothing at all in terms of significant results because of this. So this relates a lot to my clients. When we sort out the sleeping patterns, they see their results sky high, fly through the door. And this is what we want to do with you. So, essentially, first thing is make sure your room is cool, dark, it's quiet, no screens or lights when you're trying to go to sleep. That even goes for like a small charging light. You don't want anything on in the room because that will interfere with the eyes. It will interfere with your brain thinking that, there's a little bit of light. Is it daytime? Should I really be asleep? Consistency in bedtime. Now, that doesn't mean 11 o'clock on the dot. Just as consistency doesn't mean eating the same meal every single day or training the same program every single day. Consistency just means being consistent with it. More often than not, you're getting to bed around 10:30, not 10:30 or not, but around 10:30 or whatever your bedtime should be. Giving yourself enough time, anywhere between 7 and 8 hours of good quality sleep before you have to wake up. And that goes again for the wake-up routine. The wake-up routine is super important as well. What do you typically do when you wake up? Always good to get up and do some sort of movement, whether that is go to the gym, whether that is to go on a nice walk, or even just to simply stretch before you jump into the world of work, the world of stress, the world of coffee and caffeine. Pre-sleep rituals. So this relates to your routine. What do you do before bed? So let's talk about half an hour leading up to bed. You might switch off all your screens and devices, go through your hygiene routines such as brushing your teeth, skincare. You might have a little stretch, a little snuggle with your partner, maybe a little bit more if you're lucky. But you don't have to tell me that. All I mean is pre-sleep rituals. Again, if you can keep those consistent, it automatically programs your body and your mind to get ready to go to sleep. So there's a good one there. Nutrition hacks. Okay, so avoid any heavy meals within 1 or 2 hours of bed. So if you're someone who is, typically a late night eater, what I would suggest, and sometimes you can't help it because it might be because of work, it might be because the only time you can get to the gym is, after work, which means you're not home till 9. I would then have your smallest meal at the end of the day, just so you are then, so something like a protein shake and then, something high protein with minimal carbs, minimal fats, because you want to basically give yourself the best chance of sleep. That is when you are going to recover. Of course, avoid alcohol. And I'm not stupid, I'm not naive. Some of you like to drink, I like to go for a beer. But I will tell you, even just having one beer will affect sleep. Having multiple drinks before you go to bed, or even multiple drinks anyway in the day, is going to affect sleep poorly. So of course, best to, for the majority of the time, avoid alcohol at all costs. I would also say any drinks in general too close to bedtime are going to affect sleep, just generally because you need to get up and go for a wee. So try and stop drinking any fluids before around 2 hours before you go to sleep. And I would also say, no caffeine within maybe 6 hours of going to sleep. So I actually have my last caffeinated drink, usually, it's not all the time, but usually by 1 p.m. Today's not one of those days because today has been a bit of a heavy morning, a bit of a mind-numbing morning. Not the best start to a Friday, but we move, we get on. And finally, to help further discipline your sleep and help understand it a little bit more as well, you can track and reflect on your sleep. Track it through a wearable device. Whoop is a very popular one to use for your sleep. And you'll be able to then not only see how long you sleep for, see your quality, see the types of sleep such as REM or whatever cycles you were able to enter. And, it gives you a good accuracy score on your recovery from, excuse me, I'm yawning, I should go to sleep, hey? Or am I sending myself to sleep? But yeah, essentially you should be able to get some good data there. And then you can reflect on, okay, why did I have a bad night's sleep last night? It's because I did have a beer with my friends at 7 or whatever. It could be something like that. That gives you that bit of a eureka moment to then, implement something else and improve on your sleep moving forward. So the signs of poor sleep, much like me yawning at the moment in the middle of the day, that could be seen as a poor sign. But of course, if you're still tired after 7 or plus hours of sleep, then it's not necessarily the time, but the quality of sleep that you're getting. If you're moody, and typically your mood swings quite irrationally, and you're quite irritable, like you say, that word focus, we're not able to focus on things, you're quite agitated, fidgety, etc., then yes, you're probably suffering from poor sleep. Cravings for sugar and caffeine, like I say, it messes with your hormones, it messes with those hunger hormones in particular, and your body is telling you sugar and caffeine to stay awake, and that's why you potentially crave it. If you're just performing poorly in your training, your lifts are either plateauing or even regressing, your sort of stamina and endurance is really down the pan, you just don't feel as mobile, as loose, as athletic as you would usually, then again, take a look at your sleep. This could be a real big factor behind that. And of course, no focus, a lack of motivation is a huge one. You just don't want to do anything. You're tired. The last thing you want to do is, write that business proposal you were supposed to write, or, put that video together for your online content, because you're tired at the end of the day, and you just don't have that, that energy to really put into whatever tasks it is that you should be doing that day. And of course, just general laziness, like tiredness, will cause you to be lazy. It will stop you from moving as much throughout the day. And obviously, that's not what we want. We don't want to be lazy. There's a difference between resting and being lazy. And you know yourself. But at the same time, if you find yourself struggling to do the bare minimum and really just choosing the easy option over and over, then I think laziness is creeping in, and that could be a sign of poor sleep. So what should you do? Prioritize sleep like training. It is as, if not even more important than training, than diet, than NEAT activity. As I already mentioned, it has to be prioritized hugely. Implement small steps to improve sleep over time. So don't just try and drastically change everything at once. Today, or no, this week we might focus on bedtime. Next week we might focus on turning off screen times. The week after, we're going to look at bringing our lighter meal later on in the day and having our heavier meals earlier on in the day. These small adjustments over time will then help you build a really solid sleep routine. And of course, if you want to get any bonus information, any extra content or extra guidance, extra support, extra help, then you could always follow my page, Thomas_Optimal Coach, for more information on how to get the best out of not only your sleep but your fitness in general. This video is just a small, shall we say, segment or a small part of the education hub that I have here. I would love you to be a part of it and take part with it. But hopefully you found a lot from this sleep lesson, shall we say. And like I say, if you would like to follow my page, you're going to get more free fitness content. You're going to be inspired to continue your fitness journey or even start your fitness journey. You may even get to be able to seek help and advice on how to achieve your fitness goals from yours truly. And if you wanted to take it one step further, you could join a successful one-to-one coaching program guaranteed to get you the results that you are looking for. So there's my tag again, @ThomasOptimalCoach. I hope you have enjoyed this lesson on sleep. Sweet dreams. God bless. Mwah.